Good afternoon, everyone. Um, I want to specially welcome you for joining today's webinar and the Financial Lakeside. And thank you for joining our group today. I also want to thank our sponsors, LMS UK, Easy Learn Education UK, and all the private sponsors that made this program possible. I'll start by saying that anything that has no foundation is possibly going to collapse. And we all know the saying that it's always good to grow up rather than jump up and fall down. And so today we're going to be making a foundation for a series of webinars we're going to be doing over the next 6 weeks. Today will be the basis and the foundation for the webinar coming up. For those who want to know the kind of things we'll be doing in the next 6 weeks, so popular demand and our sponsors have talked about remote jobs. So supporting Nigerians with getting remote jobs in the United States. And so what we'll be doing is just talking to you about those platforms and showing you why one is better than another, just the nitty-gritty of remote jobs. And that's basically what we'll be doing. A few other people have also talked about the UK Global Talent Visa information, which we're going to be making sure that we talk about in the coming weeks as well. Right, so just to go in, we're just going to start with value. And the reason why most people, or let me say quite a lot of people, are complaining today is because they do not understand their value. And value is very, very fundamental in anything we want to do. I mean, in achieving progress, in growth, value is key. And so I'll just start by talking about value today. We need to understand value, and then that will help us to navigate what we're going to be doing over the next 6 weeks. The illustration I usually give is about cocoa. So cocoa or cocoa beans are usually used to produce things like chocolate. Now, chocolate are the refined version of cocoa. Value has been added to cocoa to make it chocolate. So if value wasn't added, it won't be chocolate. And this brings me to a country like Nigeria. You see, Nigeria, we are very blessed and rich with things like cocoa, and we're exporting a lot of it to many Western countries. But we make less than half of what these countries are making. In fact, many of these countries make times 5 or even times 10 of how much we make from the same cocoa. And the simple reason is that they have added value to it. So value is very, very important. And every employer wants chocolate. They do not want cocoa. And so you need to polish yourself into an attractive chocolate. So one of the questions or the key questions you ask yourself is, are you chocolate or are you cocoa? Well, that's a rhetorical question, but you need to be asking yourself that question. Are you chocolate or are you cocoa? If you are cocoa, you still need to get refined. And that means you still need to add value to yourself. If you're chocolate, there's room for improvement. There are different types of chocolates. Some of you know Snickers, Bounty, all sort of chocolate. Are you a premium level chocolate, or is there still room for improvement? Can you get better? And all these things is for you to say someone has gained value is more of information. How much do they know, and how much are they using this information that they have got? And this is across board. I can go on and on with examples. For example, let me give 1 or 2 more examples. With land, someone comes and says, Mr. A, for example, comes and says, oh, I put my land out there on the market for a few months now, and nobody's buying. Well, I think you're thinking what I'm thinking. The first question everybody would like to ask is, where is your land, Mr. A? And imagine Mr. A says, oh, my land is in Borno, it's somewhere next to Meduguri. Now you've got the answer. The value of that land, without you seeing it, is already low. Why is it low? That area is plagued with insecurity. So and things around us determine the value of things. The information we have determines the value as well, and many other things determine value. So in this example of land, imagine someone has got a land in VGC or in Maitama in Abuja. Automatically, without seeing the land, you will be able to say things like, oh, I'm sure that land will be expensive. It's because it's very close to things that have value. So, and it's in an area that has value. So that land itself is likely to have value. So moving on and on and on, I can say the same thing about clothes, the same thing about shoes, the same thing about cars, but ultimately the biggest value you need to be adding is to yourself. You need to add value to yourself, and this is where this program needs to build the foundation of adding value. So we really, really, really want you over this next 6 weeks to not just get a remote job in the United States, to not just immigrate to the United Kingdom on a global talent visa. We not just want you to become wealthy. We not just want you to do all the things we'll be doing over the next 1 year. We want you to add value to yourself. It's only when you have value that you'll be able to dish out value. People who have no value cannot give out value to anybody. So my question to you today, or one of my early questions to you today, is how much are you worth? How much are you worth? So this leads me to the next subtopic, which is more of the wealth part. The wealth part. So the wealth part is very important, and I want you to follow me carefully. In fact, when it comes to the wealth part takes me usually 2 hours to teach. And so I'm going to be talking about that in a bit more detail, but it's not going to take more than 10 minutes. So let's go into the wealth part and talk more about it. When it comes to the wealth part, there are 4 groups of people. There are 4 groups of people. The first group in the wealth part are the people on the job route. The people on the job route. Please follow me carefully. And this is where many of the people joining this webinar will be. Now, the people on the job route are people that trade their time for money. A lot of them trade their time for money. It's the slowest path to wealth. In fact, I can convincingly tell you that it is almost impossible to stay on this route and be wealthy. It's very, very difficult. So the first route, which is the job route, is the smallest route, and is simply trading your time for money. Now, what's the problem with this route? This route is very inconveniencing. I mean, quite a lot of things you want to achieve, quite a lot of things you want to do, you cannot do them because you are losing time. And when you lose time, you are using your time to get money, then you cannot do anything else. This is the biggest problem with the job route. Now, let's move on to the next level. The next level is the solo hustle, or what I call the solo hustler. Now, the solo hustler is what I call a sole proprietorship business, one-man business. They are usually people like freelancers and self-employed people. These people, they are their own receptionists, they are their own accountants, they are their own CEO, they are everything. So they do everything. They are their security men, they are their drivers, they do everything in the business. The only difference between a solo hustler, or those who are on the solo hustle, over the job route, is that they have a bit of control over their time, just a bit. So when you check it, contrast it with the job route, there is still some time for them. Their time is not completely for their boss. However, this is still a stressful path to wealth, and is very slow. The first one is almost impossible. This second one is a slower path to wealth. Solo hustle. Solo means being on your own. You want to run the race on your own. Now we are in a world where partnerships, cooperation hits it. That's how to get it. If you're doing things on your own, things are literally going to be very difficult for you. So that's the second path to wealth, the solo hustler. Now, let's talk about those who are builders. The builders are on the builder way. And this is a recommended path because the person involved chooses system over self. And what's the system? A system means that you don't have to do everything on your own. People are doing it for you. So you are leveraging on other people's time to achieve what you really want to achieve. This is system over self. So by all means, these people are a bit, in terms of time, they have a bit more time to themselves. And in terms of money, they are also going to be making a lot of money. So if you are able to leverage system over self, you fall under the builder's way. That's a very good way, but that is not the highest level. That is not the maximum level. So the builder's way is something that most people should target, and most people are targeting, especially if you're on the job route. If you're on the job route, you don't have to move step by step. You don't have to move from the job route to be a solo hustler. You can move from the job route and move to the builder's way. So you can jump, you can fly, you can move from the job route and you can move to the investor's lane. You don't have to go one step after another. But let's talk about the superior wealth path. The superior wealth path, which I would say is the investor lane, is using money to make money. Let me say that again. The investor path or the investor lane is, these are people or guys who believe that money can be used to buy money. Now, the problem with this wealth path is that you already have to have some money to be able to buy money. So if you have 500 naira, for example, you can use it to actually buy 5,000 naira, but you need to have 500 naira. Otherwise, you can't buy 5,000 naira. So these are the guys that ultimately want to invest and are choosing the right places to invest. So there are people that invest their money in things like real estate. They invest their money in other people's businesses and anything that can create more money for them. And they don't really have to do any work. They don't have to use time to buy money. So if you look at the factors that make the lower pathways undesirable, it's about time. If we're going to draw a graph, basically the job route leaves you with 0% time. The solo hustler gives you about maybe 20 to 30% time. The builder's way gives you at least 70% time, while the investor lane gives you almost 100% time. And in this world, you need all the time you can to invent, to think, to grow, to do whatever you want to do. And so the reason why we brought these subtopics to this webinar, which will be leading the next 5 to 6 weeks, is because we want you to have an understanding of where you're going. A big issue with many people, especially in Nigeria, is that people have no direction. So they talk about some sort of Ponzi scheme and everybody runs there. So that's where people are getting money. They run there and they've been saving money to start a business, but then they run there and put their money in the Ponzi scheme and they lose it all. Then they say, oh, do you know that you can put your money in this bank? And they lock their money there without having an understanding. And after like 3 or 4 days, they take their money out without making the dividends that they wanted to make from the bank. This is I call it lack of awareness. It's a situation where you do not have a direction you're going. And this is very, very bad for growth. So if you really, really want to move forward, you want to make it, no matter where you are in the ladder, no matter your age, you just need to understand a direction and where you want to go to. And in terms of making money, the wealth path, you need to understand where you are. Are you in the job route at the moment? Are you the solo hustler at the moment? Are you on the builder's way at the moment? Or are you an investor? Understanding your wealth path will make you know how much effort you need to put in and where you need to be going. So now let's quickly move to the last subtopic of the webinar, which is the wealth pyramid. The wealth pyramid. So the pyramid of wealth, as they call it, is very vital as well, and is the third layer of foundation for understanding your direction and understanding what you should be doing. So for the wealth pyramid, there are 5 different layers, and these 5 different layers are to be explained explicitly so that you have a good understanding of what is happening to you. Now, I'll start with the first layer, what we call the survival zone. Right, the survival zone, this is where most people, or this is where most people say things like, oh, I'm in a financial crisis. By the way, that's the former name. When someone says, oh, I'm in a crisis, financial crisis, they are in survival zone. So for the survival zone, if you want to know who is in a survival zone, and I'm telling you the signs and symptoms of survival zone so that you can know if you are the one, if you are there or if you are not there. If you are constantly in debt, you're constantly owing money, you any things is you need to borrow money, you need to call people, you can't do anything on your own. Before you can achieve anything, you must look for funds or support. You are in a survival zone and you need to do something fast about it. Now, the aim of our 6 weeks and beyond is for you to be able to move away from where you are, to move to a higher ground, to a higher level, to something or to a place where you want to be. So if you are in a survival zone, you need to make up your mind, because everything starts with the right mindset. Once you make up your mind, the next is the direction. How do I want to move away from the survival zone? So these are some of the things that we will guide you with. Remember that you don't have to pay any money to anybody, because this has been paid for by the organizations we talked about earlier. Now, the next step is those on a shaky ground. So that's another group of people on a shaky ground. Now, this is it was formerly called financial instability. That's what when you hear the word financial instability, they are on a ground that is a bit shaky and wacky. They don't have a balance. Now, they are the ones living from paycheck to paycheck. They have savings, unlike survival zone that cannot afford to have savings, but their savings are unpredictable. They may save 5,000 today, and the next time they will save will be in November, maybe 6 months away, and they may save 3,000. And they may wake up one day and clear their savings and then start to save again. Now, the major difference between those on shaky ground and those in survival zone is that those on shaky ground usually do not go into debt. Survival zones, because they have no savings, anytime there's something unpredictable, some sort of unpredictable expense, they have to borrow. But those in shaky ground, because they have some small savings, anytime they're in trouble, they'll dip into that saving, and that saving can never grow. So they can never use it for anything valuable. This is the problem with those on the shaky ground. So it was formerly called financial instability, and I think you can see why, because these people are actually unstable. Now, let's move on to those on steady steps. You can see that the name steady gives it a clearer picture that these guys are not shaky in any way, but they are still climbing something. So they've not got to the building yet. Steps. For you to say he's on the staircase, he's taking some steps, it means he hasn't gotten to the place he wants to be. And that just gives you a picture of these people who are financially stable, but still need a lot to be done. So those on stable steps, what we formerly call financially stable people, are those that can cover their bills. They can afford to save from time to time. But the problem here is that they have what we call limited long-term security. And what's limited long-term security? If they lose their jobs, they're in trouble. These guys, they don't have any savings or money from anywhere else apart from their own personal savings. They don't have anything to insulate them. So when there's what we call a global crisis, when there's some problems around where they make their money from, then they fall into survival zone. They become shaky. They start to have other issues. So although they are moving forward, their success is not guaranteed. So they need to run away from. You can't sit or stay on the steps and say, this is where I want to be forever, or this is where I want to be long term. You may be, the word financial stability is deceiving, and this is where a lot of people are. In fact, is a global trap. When I say global trap, I'm in the United Kingdom, and if you check a lot of people in the United Kingdom, they are on the level of financial stability. If you go to the United States, a lot of people are either financial instability or financial stability. These are not places to stay for too long. We recognize that there are places people need to pass through, but they are not the places to live in. Right, so let's move on. The next level of the wealth pyramid is freedom builders. Freedom builders. And I'll just tell you clearly for free that freedom builders, which was previously called financial independence, is even a bigger trap than financial stability. Now, most times when people have financial independence, this is where their life ends and they cannot see beyond them. So someone does make this illustration as the difference between rich and wealthy. So rich means you can afford many of the things you want or all the things you want, but wealthy is not about affording. It's much more. It's much more. And the wealthy mindset is a big mindset. It's a mindset of giving. The wealthy mindset is a mindset of problem solving. The wealthy mindset, well, maybe I shouldn't go into that because that will be some of the things we talk about when we go into this course to talk deeper. However, remember that whoever is tagged a freedom builder is someone that has their lifestyle covered. There's nothing that they want really generally that they cannot afford, and they do not actively need to work. In fact, they can possibly go into early retirement. Now, if you're already on this level, it's good. It's a level where you can stay, but remember that there's a level ahead of you, and as humans, you should be at trying to move a step forward. Each time you reach a step, your next level should be growing, not staying stagnant. So staying at the level of a freedom builder is stagnation. Right, let's talk about the last level, what some people formerly refer to as financial freedom, is what we call wealth mastery. I call them wealth masters, masters of wealth. Now, this group of people have complete control over their time and money. And remember, this is all about time and money, or everything, time and money. If you have money, and I'll tell you why it's all about time and money. Imagine they ask you to choose between these two people. A 25-year-old who is poor, he has no money, and a 90-year-old who is a multi-billionaire. In fact, the second richest man in the world. And if they put it to you, which will you choose? Well, I'll tell you what most people have thought about in previous webinars. Most people have said, well, I'll choose the 25-year-old. And the reason is not far-fetched. It's because the 90-year-old or the 95-year-old man has run out of time. Nobody wants to enjoy a Bugatti or a Bentley or a private jet when they are going to be 92 or 93, or when they will soon die. You don't want to have just 2 years in your private jet and die. See, but that 25-year-old poor boy or poor man can still become a billionaire at 40 and enjoy his wealth for another 50 to 60 years. I mean, nobody wants to be enjoying wealth at the age of 90. You don't want to buy your first Bugatti when you are 95. You want to buy it when you're 35, when you can enjoy it, when you can live life, as people say. So this is where the time problem comes in. But there is the money problem as well. I mean, if you solve these problems, time and money problems, you've ended up solving at least the two biggest problems of most people's lives. And then the next thing is you can now start to solve every other small problem around. So this is where wealth mastery is very important. You've got your time and you've been able to completely solve the problem of time, but you've also got your money, and the money is coming in without you actively working. So this is very, very good and very, very important. So basically, I think this is where we'll stop in building the foundation. And in the next webinar, which is next week, We shall be talking about the remote jobs, how to get them. So we don't help anybody to get it. We just show you. It's more of a support. We show you how to get these jobs for those who are interested in surveys and paid surveys as well. We'll show you some of the ones that you can stay in Nigeria and get paid payouts and all that, and many other things like that. So basically, I'll end here, and I would ask if you've got any questions.